Now, last year, government tabled before Parliament the Competition Bill 2022, seeking to promote fair competition between enterprises, and among us, which also leave the market unbound by the manipulation of stronger trading enterprises, to at least create a favorable market space for those who are actually engaging in different business strategies or different business activities. Now, David Bahati, who is the Minister of State for Industry, did reveal that some of these particular activities that the bill seeks to regulate are anti-cooperative agreements, the anti-competitive agreements, part of that, abuse of dominance, mergers, and acquisitions within the same matter. Now, currently, Uganda has no specific law that controls anti-competitive behavior of firms in the market, but there are a few sectors like banking and energy that have competition provisions in the laws that are actually regulating them. So if you look at the laws that actually regulate anti-competitive behavior of firms, it's only ideally the banking and the energy sector that have provisions in their laws. The laws that regulate these sectors are the ones that actually help them come through. But if I'm to take you through the first reading of this particular bill, the bill was mainly focusing on avoiding certain activities in the market that had the business or consumers or both the sectors, and curb the practices that are violating the ethical behavior of those in the market. Now, the bill also seeks to at least sustainably gain a market space of competition, and of course also given the fact that it has to consider the interests of the consumers that allow participants on the Ugandan markets to trade with freedom. This particular bill also promotes the competition between enterprises and is apparently leaving the market unbound by the manipulation of stronger trading enterprises. But also on the same plane, some of the activities that the bill seeks to regulate include the anti-competitive agreements. There is also abuse of dominance, mergers, and acquisitions. So the part, when you look at this particular one, in regards to administration, according to what the bill presents, is that under clause 3, the act shall be administered by the ministry responsible for trade. If we are to look at which ministry will be overlooking the entire bill once it is actually asserted to as an act. Now, according to clause 4, the functions of the ministry include the following. There is also the Ministry of Trade. There is promoting and sustaining fair competition in the market, because the bill still seeks to at least ideally bring out this kind of transparency. Then also there is a need to protect the interests of consumers who are in the market, so that at least the consumers know where or which kind of product is good for them or not, and which one is favorable for them. Then for their consumption, then there is also a need to monitor the market for anti-competitive and unfair practices, plus various agreements. Then on the other hand, there is also need to investigate anti-competitive and unfair prices or unfair practices and agreements within the markets. So also to approve mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures which have no adverse effect on competition in the market have also been highlighted, with the same kind of strategy being laid here. Now, also with the same competition bill, bill number 28, still in a provision of one of those few and key provisions that were highlighted in the first reading and the first presentation of this bill. According to clause 8 of the bill, a person shall not enter into any agreement or take any decision or engage in any concerted action or practice in respect of production, supply, then there is something to do with distribution, acquisition, or control of goods, and then all the provision of services which causes or it's likely to cause an adverse effect on the competition within the Ugandan market. So apparently this is something that you should look at and at least feel like, okay, we're into the competition world, because the businesses are always giving room for a lot of competition. But in this particular app, that you get to realize that there is actually a plea from some of the legislators that we should at least benchmark from Kenya on how competition in business is moving. And then also there is also need to promote equity amongst the other traders within the country. So we have this and more in our first morning update here on SMB.
trade in Uganda and to go private sector or privatization for that matter, the country did not have a specific policy on trade liberalization, neither did we have a specific policy on privatization, although privatization was covered by Public Enterprises Reform and Divestiture Act. So our liberalization came with absence of trade sector regulation. Attempts were made in 1998 to draft a bill, but that bill was never realized into law. Along the way, mainly infrastructure-based services that were liberalized, and this was largely bankrolled by the World Bank. So sector regulators like the Electricity Regulatory Authority, Uganda Communications Commission, all these were driven by the need to stabilize those sectors for growth, but not necessarily and specifically for competition regulation purposes, although subsequently that has also been introduced, but it's not effective. We handled at COMESA a specific case for the merger between American Tower Company and Eaton that had been approved by UCC, but that takeover was not compliant, so a penalty was done at that level. But internally, these things happen, and we don't get very, very keen observation of them. I'll give an example of the takeover of Uganda breweries by East African breweries and later by an American company. It came with DHL, and DHL took over all the distribution for the products of that beverage company. What happened is they knocked out every other distributor that already had a contract with the company. So those kind of things happen without follow-up because that would have been handled and it would have been given conditions so that they don't knock out those small players. So that's just an example. If we go deep into the market, there are several things that happen. Even our own Minister of Trade is licensing wholesale trade licensing. And wholesale trade licensing directly then competes with retailers. And all these people get money from the same financial institutions at the same interest rates. So that will let us speak to why the mandate may not necessarily have to be in that ministry or any ministry at all. Government itself is setting up monopolies, and these monopolies are not regulated by anyone. We had the motor vehicle inspection by SGS through Ministry of Works, and it set up even prices. The basis of those prices has never been provided to the public that is supposed to pay, and yet that's a monopoly. Now, this is a service which can be provided by any competent service provider for vehicle inspection. It need not have been a monopoly, and in my view, it shouldn't be, because then the price competition is undermined by the government that is setting up this. Now we have an upcoming electronic vehicle number plate contract. It's also introduced a monopoly. How shall we deal with the pricing efficiency of that institution or that company if we don't open it up? My understanding of number plates is that they are sourced from the same providers in the international market. Even the current two service providers, that is Tampeco and Arnold Brooklyn, they both source the number plates from the same company in Germany. And then the pricing of number plates is fixed by government, so thereby creating a price monopoly. And therefore we forego the efficiency that would come with competition, but also we pay a lot more for a service that would have probably cost less. That's the general picture that we have in the market, and going deeply into each sector, we could be able to identify specific cases of reference, but that would take way too long time. I'll go to the second section that deals with matters around the bill. We've looked into some sectors. Now, the banking sector needs regulation from competition perspective. Bank of Uganda is responsible for for stabilizing the financial sector, and therefore it's wise to have thresholds. I think that's the wisdom from the regulation for market stability. But because we have kept increasing capital thresholds, banks have disappeared, those that would provide low-level competition, and we've ended up with only the big banks. This is not to say that there is a cartel, but probably there is a hardcore cartel in the financial services sector, and that is responsible for keeping the interest rates very high.
Kenya is the biggest economy in the region. It established their authority in 2010, only after 4 years when the EAC had established the law. Uganda has taken more than 15 years even to learn that it was important. And yet we have a ministry responsible for trade. So our viewpoint would be, there is no point in reinventing the wheel. We are in EAC to learn from one another. We have actually an authority that is working fairly very well by regional standards. We recommend entirely that Parliament of Uganda can utilize the opportunity of benchmarking against Kenya, because Kenya is our greatest trading partner, first and foremost, and a member of the EAC. And above all, one of the 3 original members of the EAC who have seen this region grow. The last, before my colleague could come in, Chair, is to say that WUMA is ready and able to make a rejoinder to this that will detail the nitty-gritty of what cannot be covered in the 20 minutes that were granted. Thank you very much.
Now, the bill mainly focuses on avoiding certain activities in the market that mainly hurt the business or the consumers themselves, or both the sectors. And they actually, the bill intends to curb the practices violating the ethical behavior on the market space. The bill seeks to at least have sustainability of competition in the market and considers the interests of those particular ones, or those in the Ugandan market, with the kind of freedom it does bring for them. The bill promotes the competition between enterprises, but also on the other hand, leaving the market unbound by the manipulation of stronger trading enterprises that are attached to it. So the bill has 7 parts and 29 clauses so far. And these parts, there are parts that actually start with the preliminary administration. Then there is something to do with the prohibition of anti-competitive practices and agreements. Then the prohibition of abuse of dominant position. Then the mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures, among others, inquiries and related matters, still also in the same bill as well. So still on the matter of fact, this part provides for general matters, including offenses in relation to furnishing of information, offenses by individuals in different or various enterprises. So ideally, the regulations that are being brought about by this particular bill is to at least target and create a fair, competitive space for anyone engaging in business. And this is what the bill seeks to at least have to apparently bring on scale. Now, if I'm to at least also go through the second reading of this same particular bill on the same matter to do with the competition bill, like the legislators do believe that if we are to use Kenya to benchmark, as a matter of fact, it should be something that we can look at and at least understand that it will provide an enterprise holding a dominant position to at least remain relevant, and then the market shall not also impose an unfairly low purchasing prices to at least widen the competition levels, but at least they will be limiting production and also the technical development and innovation to the prejudice of consumers, or discriminate between consumers or suppliers on the basis of non-commercial criteria, including nationality or place of residence. Now, there's also an issue to do with abuse of a dominant position, which may lead to discontinuation of the agreement, payment of a fine not exceeding 10% of the average of the turnover for the last 3 years of each enterprise, as well as awarding of compensation to an aggrieved party, among the rest that comes by. So for the mergers, for example, there is an issue to do with acquisition and joint ventures. because this bill also requires enterprises to at least enter into an agreement to give notice to the ministry in form of the prescribed regulations that are issued by the minister. So with that particular update, we are stretching our eyes now to the traffic updates this morning to see what is happening on ground in the CBD as well as the other areas around the Kampala suburbs. We have Beridio Andrew on standby already to at least give us more of the highlights on the movement of the vehicles, motorcycles, and the pedestrians this morning.
Thank you very much, Joram. Today we are just right here at the Wanagea traffic lights, observing the traffic atmosphere right here. And for the sake of time, going straight to observe the situation. And of course, if you're in your home and you're planning to come to town or whatever destination, and you're planning to pass via this particular junction, it's high time you get to understand what is really transpiring right here. If I start from my left side all the way down there, you see from Makere Road, the vehicles start coming from that side all the way from Sir Apollo, and of course coming right here to this particular junction, you get to realize that it's quite a very smooth flow. There is a smooth flow of the vehicles. It's not really as congested as such as that, because there is obedience to the traffic lights, definitely, despite the fact that there are some traffic officers right here trying to make sure that the jam is being controlled. But as we speak right now, in general, it's a little bit very calm. Unlike for those that are coming from Makere, there are other traffic lights ahead before you actually reach here. Probably that could be contributing as to why you may not be in position to reach in the actual time that you ought to reach. So that's the situation as you are observing right here. Now, heading straight here to Bombo Road, we see the vehicles start connect all the way from that lane. If you're coming from Bwai, say you are in Namungona and you're planning to pass there here and you're coming to town, it's a little slightly congested, though you may not really be in position to reach on the time you actually need. There is quite so many vehicles more away from that side, but the congestion is a little bit mild. So I would actually advise you to look for another alternative, because in my observation, the vehicles are released in quite a few intervals and stopped at some point, because ever since we came here, my observation is that most of the vehicles are being held in 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes 5. So you can observe that they have just been released, and then before we know it, they have just been stopped. So if you're coming from Waise and all those places and you're planning to pass via the Bombo Road, chances are high you may not be in position to reach in the time you wish. Now, getting straight to Kamocha Road here, connecting to Mulago, Kamocha Mulago. Definitely, if you're coming from town or from Makere and you're planning to pass to go to Mulago, Kamocha, and connect to all those places, it's quite a smooth flow of the vehicles. It's not really that tight, unlike the fast traffic lights at the Makere main gate, which might only affect you. But this particular junction, this particular street, it's very, very, very fine. There is nothing. You will be in position to actually reach and execute that business deal that you want to execute in the given time. As you're observing right there, the congestion is not really that tight, and majority of the people, you can see there is always a smooth flow of the vehicles. Now, heading straight away from there, as we look at the road coming from heading to town, and of course that is from Kamocha side, and heading from Kamocha Mulago heading to town, as you are observing right here, it's quite very smooth and there is no congestion. So probably if you're in those areas, if you're in Mulago, you're in Kamocha, and you actually plan to use this particular junction to head to town, chances are high that you will be in position to reach in that time that you desire. There is a very smooth flow. It's quite actually very smooth, not as really as congested as that. So chances are high that you will be in position to reach in time the way you reach. There are quite so many people right here, borders, and of course some of the people that are using this particular route, they're not so really congested. Yes, the traffic officers are trying to ensure that there is a balanced flow of the vehicles from the different destinations right there. It's very quite surprising. It's a Tuesday, and of course, it's one of the most busiest days, the first days of the week, where majority of the people actually are thinking to report to work rather in the given time. So sometimes on certain days there is a congestion right here, but today it's a little bit a unique Tuesday. There is not really much heavy congestion right here. So those who are heading to town, coming to town from the places, you're from YC, you plan to come to town, you stay in Sao Paulo, you're planning to come to town, you stay in Mulago, and you're going to use this particular roundabout, and you're going to use the different roads that we've mentioned, chances are very high that you will be in position to reach in time. So, of course, be cautious as you're driving and make sure that you don't you obey the traffic rules, the traffic lights, the road signs, and you'll be in position to reach in time and, of course, to avoid the accidents. It's always a congested hour at such a time. It's a rush hour, in other words, but that is something that you can actually deal with in case you actually leave home a little bit early and you're coming to use a certain particular junction. So you get to see, this is the situation right there. These are the vehicles that you're observing right there, all the way from Bombo Road, just being released. And of course, they have spent about 5 minutes into that area of being held right there. But they're always released in very few intervals. As unlike you can see all the way from Makere there, where there is quite a smooth flow of the vehicles coming from there. And yeah, that's the situation, that's the traffic condition in general. I'll say it's a little bit mild. There is a mild congestion right here. Just a few people that have the greater advantage that will be in position to reach in time, most especially those that are staying in areas like Kamocha, Mulago, and they're planning to use this particular junction and they're heading straight to town or to the city center. Chances are high that they will be in position to reach in the right time. This is the traffic updates. Andrew Barije, back to studio with Joram.
Barije, Andrew, with what is happening around Wandegea, and you get to realize that the movement of the vehicles as far as the direction of where most of the people are heading to has already kicked off. Though the vehicles are moving on swiftly well, it's not that of a headache for the traffic officers who have been deployed. But so it goes back to anyone who is planning to quickly kickstart off your business there. Well, you can now direct yourself on which route is preferably better for you to use, but also keeping it in mind that it is better for you to at least stretch your time of travel or your time of movement a little bit earlier, because in such early days of the week, people tend to at least wake up early and hit the road. So you will be realizing that around 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. there would be some traffic congestion in most of the busy areas that are connecting to the city. Well, the traffic updates does bring us to the end of this particular segment. After the break, I'll be right back with the latest information regarding business news coming in across the East African Community region. Not only that, the information also relating to business across the African continent and the international scene. So keep it Smart 24 TV, as I'll be right back. But before that, also to remind you that you can invest in government bonds with Zabu. Zabu is a platform that is definitely there for you to kickstart off your investment journey. And if at all you do not have an account yet, you can use your NIN to register today. Use the USSD code *292# and you'll definitely be ushered into Zabu. Zabu says my money, my future. So it's that simple, efficient, and effective. With only a minimum of 15,000 Ugandan shillings, Zabu will definitely give you all that matters, investment, and you to at least put yourself and position yourself well into the world of investment with just a minimum of 15,000 Ugandan shillings or more. The markets on the Zabu platform open at 8:15 a.m. and close at 3:15 p.m. East African Standard Time. Please do note that these markets close on weekends and on public holidays. So the rest of the days, they will be open apart from those particular ones. But of course, Zabu, my money, my future, powered by Altex East Africa, which says do something new. Well, you can keep along with us here on Smart 24, channel 394 on GOTV and channel 372 on DSTV. I do return with more business updates, like I did mention, across the East African community and the international scene. Good morning.